Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Representatives from the NYPD say that a 45-year-old man has been left with life-changing injuries this week after he was the victim of a brutal and unhinged attack that took place right in the heart of New York City. The whole thing unfolded at around 4 a.m. on March 16th when the victim, Mark White, was nearing the end of his night. The 45-year-old, who was described as a well-liked and popular party promoter in the New York club scene, was at Nebula nightclub right near Times Square. He had been busy working at the crowded club when he stepped outside for a few moments. While the exact circumstances of what happened next are still being investigated, it's said that Mark got into an argument with a young man who worked at a nearby food cart. Apparently, Mark was a frequent customer and the two had exchanged words before, but on that morning, things escalated. The younger man allegedly grabbed a can of gasoline from the cart, doused Mark with it, and set him on fire. It appears that no one witnessed the actual altercation, though Mark was seen moments later by horrified bystanders as he ran down the street covered in flames, desperately searching for help. Thankfully, Good Samaritans were reportedly quick to intervene and someone grabbed a fire extinguisher and was able to put out the fire. Still, Mark was apparently left with third-degree burns and other injuries to large parts of his body, including his face. A photo snapped at the crime scene shows the haunting aftermath, with Mark being loaded into an ambulance before he was rushed to a nearby hospital. Despite the apparent lack of direct witnesses to the awful crime, police say surveillance footage from the area helped them to identify the suspect. His name has not officially been released at this time, though multiple local media sources have identified him as 23-year-old Ahmad Masad, the nephew of the food cart owner. Frustratingly, though, it's been reported that Masad fled the country immediately after the attack, boarding a flight to his native Egypt. A relative told reporters in an interview she doesn't think Masad will ever come back, though it's unclear what authorities are planning to do. Currently, Mark remains in hospital, where he is said to be in critical but stable condition. Friends of the 45-year-old say the crime is all the more upsetting because Mark is usually the one looking out for other people in situations like this. One friend, who said that Mark intervened when he was mugged a few years back, stated, quote, "Mark White was there. He potentially saved my life."
Representatives from Texas's Harris County Sheriff's Office released heartbreaking details in a truly awful case this week after a devoted grandfather became collateral damage in a senseless gang conflict at a fast food restaurant. The whole thing began sometime on the afternoon of March 16th when the 61-year-old victim, Jorge Arbaiza, went to a McDonald's location in the Houston suburb of Katy. Jorge had gone there to pick up Happy Meals for his two young grandchildren. While he went inside to get the food, the kids stayed in the car with their grandmother, his wife, Teresa. What should have been just a normal and fun family day out, though, descended into chaos and tragedy when two groups of young people who were also at the fast food restaurant got into an argument inside. The cause of that argument, or what it was about, have not been revealed. However, police say that those involved were gang members. At some point, at least two pulled out guns and opened fire, without any apparent regard for the innocent people inside the restaurant. Authorities say one of the handguns was equipped with a device that essentially converted it to an automatic weapon. Teresa Arbaiza first knew that something was wrong when she began seeing people running from the business. When she spotted what looked like a weapon from the rearview mirror of her family's car, she called Jorge in a panic to see what was going on. What she heard on the other line was horrifying. Jorge told her that he had just been shot and was going to die. Police now say that Jorge was hit a staggering 5 times while standing at the McDonald's counter waiting for the Happy Meals for his grandkids. According to witnesses, in his final moments, he made the sign of the cross over himself and prayed. While this was happening, the shooters and almost all of the other alleged gang members responsible for the incident piled into cars and fled the scene. The exception was a 25-year-old man believed to be involved in the incident who was hit in the gunfire and left behind. He was taken to a hospital when emergency responders arrived and is expected to survive. However, nothing could be done for Jorge. On March 21st, Harris County Police announced that they had arrested one of the alleged shooters, a 24-year-old man named Antoine Ridge. Ridge is now charged with murder, though he apparently had an extensive criminal history prior to this, which included other violent offenses. Police say that they are still looking for at least one other person at this time. It's unclear if the injured 25-year-old man will also be charged. As for the loved ones of Jorge Arbaiza, they say that they are now doing their best to honor his memory and to come to terms with the tragedy of his loss. According to an obituary, the 61-year-old immigrated to the United States when he was just 19 years old and worked for decades to provide for his family. The obituary reads in part, quote, "He overcame every challenge with determination and an unshakable work ethic, proving that hard work, resilience, and love can create the life he envisioned. His greatest motivation was his deep desire to provide for his future wife and children, ensuring they would have opportunities beyond what he had known."
Authorities in Pennington County, South Dakota released a disturbing update in the case of a missing young woman this week, announcing that they arrested an active duty member of the U.S. Air Force for her murder roughly 2 weeks after her remains were found. According to reports, 21-year-old Sahela Sangrate was last seen sometime in August of last year. At the time, she was staying with a friend in the city of Eagle Butte. However, she had been planning a trip to California. When loved ones last heard from her, she was heading back to her home in Box Elder to pick up a few belongings. After that, she completely vanished. For more than half a year, no one could find a trace of Sahela anywhere. That was until an awful discovery was made earlier this month. On March 4th, a hiker walking through an area near the Pennington and Custer County lines stumbled across a heavily decomposed human body. It's now been confirmed that these were the remains of Sahela Sangrate. While many questions still remain about exactly what happened to the 21-year-old and why, authorities revealed this week they believe they know where the answers lie. They now allege that Sahela was killed on the Ellsworth Air Force Base, which is adjacent to Box Elder. In an announcement, investigators stated that they had arrested one of the base's airmen, 24-year-old Quintarius Chappelle. Chappelle is reportedly an aircraft inspection journeyman assigned to the 28th Aircraft Maintenance Squadron, who has been enlisted with the Air Force since 2019. The 24-year-old is now facing federal second-degree murder charges and remains in the custody of U.S. Marshals. Unfortunately, though, it's still not clear when Sahela was killed or where on the base the crime allegedly happened. Following a court hearing this week, one of Sahela's heartbroken friends who attended the proceedings told reporters, quote, "She was a very bright soul. She impacted everybody that she came in contact with. She just loved unconditionally, and it's just such a tragedy that she's gone." The case is still under investigation.
Representatives from New Mexico's Albuquerque Police Department released a shocking update in the case of a fatal hit and run this week, not only revealing that they now have evidence that the crime was deliberate, but that the main perpetrator allegedly behind it is a middle school student. The case began several months ago in the early morning hours of May 29th, 2024, when police were called about a cyclist who had been struck by a vehicle. They arrived to find 63-year-old Scott Habermel, who was suffering from critical injuries at the side of the road. Sadly, there was nothing anyone could do, and Scott was pronounced dead a short time later. At the time he was killed, Scott was on his way to work. The 63-year-old physicist and engineer worked at Sandia National Laboratories and was known for the dozens of journal articles and patents he had contributed to the fields of national security and aerospace. He was a passionate outdoorsman who cared deeply about the environment, and this was one of the reasons he enjoyed riding his bicycle to his job instead of driving. After launching an investigation, police initially didn't have much luck moving the case forward. They were able to obtain security camera footage from a church close to the crime scene, but unfortunately, this was apparently not clear enough to make out the make or model of the vehicle that had hit Scott. The situation stayed like this for several months, until in February, police got an unexpected and incredibly disturbing lead. It was about a video that had been posted to Instagram, one which appeared to show the entire crime. That wasn't all though. The account that had posted the video belonged to a 13-year-old boy. Most horrifying of all, the footage suggested that what had happened to Scott was no accident. In the harrowing footage, part of which was released this week, the 13-year-old can allegedly be seen behind the wheel of the hit-and-run vehicle, which was reportedly stolen. In the moments before the awful killing, he and his two accused accomplices, ages 15 and 11, can be heard discussing deliberately hitting a cyclist. After the 11-year-old momentarily flashes a handgun to the camera, the vehicle can be seen speeding up. It's at this point when the 15-year-old suspect tells the 13-year-old not to go too fast, saying that he should, quote, "just bump him, brah," and that he should, quote, "go like 15, 20. However, the 13-year-old doesn't appear to have slowed down when Scott can be seen entering the view of the camera moments before the fatal crash. While most media outlets we came across did not identify the suspects due to their ages, we were able to find a couple of sources that did. The 13-year-old is reportedly named Jonathan Overbay, the 15-year-old is named William Garcia, and the 11-year-old is Messiah Hayes. Overbay and Garcia are now each facing a number of charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, leaving the scene of an accident involving great bodily harm or death, and unlawful possession of a handgun. However, police say that they are still reviewing what charges they can actually file against Hayes, because under state law, he is too young to be charged with murder. Shockingly, the 11-year-old already reportedly has an extensive criminal history, one that includes a shooting, burglary, and other serious offenses. In a statement this week, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham said in part, quote, "I'm horrified by the video footage of a brazen, heartless killing involving 3 New Mexico juveniles, ages 11, 13, and 15, who targeted an innocent cyclist. This case is an appalling and heartbreaking reminder of the serious juvenile crime crisis we face in New Mexico, and our lack of tools to properly address it. At the time of this recording, Overbay and Garcia are being held on the charges against them, while Hayes is in the custody of the Children, Youth, and Families Department.
Representatives from Utah's West Valley City Police say that a 36-year-old man is in custody this week following an equally bizarre and unsettling incident in which he allegedly tried to rob a bank armed with little more than a stolen pen and a pad of paper. The whole thing unfolded sometime on March 16th when police were called by frightened employees at the First Utah Bank branch on the 3100 block of Redwood Road. Moments earlier, a man, later identified as 36-year-old Christopher Thomas Kirby, had walked inside and handed one of the tellers there a sticky note. Written on that note was, quote, "This is a robbery. I have a bomb on me that will explode. I need $20,000 in a bag." While this definitely would have been scary at the time, it turned out that Kirby had no way of delivering on his threat. In fact, the only thing he had that was threatening was the note. When police arrived, the 36-year-old was still in the lobby and was placed under arrest. In a subsequent interview, Kirby reportedly admitted that he tried to rob the bank because he needed money for food and clothes. He said he chose the location at random, mainly because of the convenience of a nearby dollar store. This is where he allegedly stole the sticky notepad and pen used in the crime. If this sounds ridiculous, it's worth pointing out that authorities don't believe Kirby is all there, so to speak. They say he just got to Utah about 10 days ago, and in that time he had already had at least 4 other interactions with police. At least some of these incidents involved mental health, while others were for things like trespassing and retail theft. At the time of this recording, Kirby remains in Salt Lake County Jail on one count of first-degree felony aggravated robbery.
Representatives from the NYPD are asking for the public's help this week as they seek to find and arrest a suspect behind a bizarre and brazen broad daylight robbery at a funeral home last month. The whole thing began at around 3 p.m. on February 17th when the victim, Ricky Daniels, was at work at the Daniels Wilhelmina Funeral Home in Manhattan's Harlem neighborhood. The 66-year-old funeral home director was in the middle of an ordinary afternoon when a man came in asking to speak with him about making some arrangements. The man, who was dressed in a black suit, black tie, and white long coat, was taken to a back office by Daniels, where he explained his supposed situation. He said he was there to plan a funeral for his late brother, who had recently died out of state. Because of the man's dressed-up appearance and friendly demeanor, initially Daniels didn't suspect that anything was up. However, as he started asking him about the specifics of his situation, he began to notice some red flags. For starters, the man claimed he'd managed to fly his brother's body into New York without pre-arranging a funeral home to receive the remains. He also claimed he couldn't remember the name of the cemetery where his brother was going to be buried, even though he stated he just bought a plot that cost him thousands of dollars. Before Daniels could dwell on any of this, though, things went completely insane. Suddenly, another man, believed to be the first suspect's accomplice, burst into the room wearing a ski mask. The pair then began demanding money and attacking Daniels. The first suspect also pulled a machete out of his coat and began threatening him with it. As if this weren't wild enough, the man apparently began flashing a fake police badge at Daniels and accusing him of watching sexually explicit material involving minors on his computer while they were talking. This was despite the fact that Daniels' computer monitor wasn't even turned on. Unfortunately for the two suspects, the strange plot didn't get them very much. As Daniels explained while he was being repeatedly pummeled, funeral homes are not cash businesses. In surveillance footage of the attack, he can be heard reportedly telling them, quote, "This is a funeral home, not a bodega." In the end, the pair of robbers settled for Daniels' wallet and cell phone, taking both before running off. One of the two men allegedly involved in the attack was later arrested after he reportedly used Daniels' credit card to make a couple of purchases. That man has since been identified as the alleged accomplice, 50-year-old Luis Ortega. In an interview following the disturbing robbery, Daniels mocked the criminals for their lack of apparent planning both before and after the crime. He told reporters in part, quote, "In my wallet was over $100,000 available in credit, and you went out and bought a pair of sneakers and a bottle of liquor? I told the detective they should go to jail just for being stupid." Still, at the time of this recording, the identity of the main suspect, the man in the long coat, remains a mystery. Police have now released footage of the man in the hopes that members of the public might be able to identify him. Anyone with information about the case is encouraged to reach out to NYPD Crime Stoppers.
Representatives from California's San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office say that they are mourning the loss of one of their own this week after a high-speed chase caused a devastating crash, one that ripped a patrol vehicle in half, leading to the death of a deputy. The whole thing began shortly after 11 a.m. on March 17th when deputies from the department's Victorville station spotted a stolen vehicle traveling near Mojave Drive and Amargosa Road. The deputies attempted to conduct a traffic stop. However, the man behind the wheel, later identified as 22-year-old Ryan Turner, refused to stop. Instead, he reportedly took off, leading to a chase. One of those involved in the pursuit was 36-year-old Hector Cuevas Jr., a 6-year veteran of the force. Hector began following Turner, with the chase quickly reaching high speeds. While the exact details of the incident have yet to be revealed at this time, what we know is that at some point during the pursuit, Hector collided with another vehicle on the road being driven by a woman. The resulting impact sent Hector's patrol car flying into a light post, with the crash being so forceful that it tore the vehicle in half. Though the female driver was okay and was taken to a hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, sadly, the same couldn't be said for the deputy. Hector was pronounced dead a short time later when paramedics arrived at the scene. In the meantime, Ryan Turner reportedly continued for roughly 2.5 miles before stopping the stolen vehicle near the intersection of Zuni Lane and Elevado Road. He attempted to escape from there on foot, though was quickly caught and arrested. Turner is now facing charges of vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated and failure to yield, causing death or serious injury. Authorities also say this is not the first time he has been involved in a dangerous chase with police. Heartbreakingly, Hector Cuevas Jr. reportedly leaves behind a wife and 2 children. In a statement this week, San Bernardino County Sheriff Shannon Dicus said in part, quote, Hector was described as a devout family man and by his law enforcement partners a cop's cop who has the ability to go between dealing with the most hardcore gang member to turning around and being able to talk to a child and making sure they felt safe and knew they were protected. At the time of this recording, Ryan Turner remains in custody.
Authorities in the city of Las Cruces, New Mexico say that 3 people are dead this week and more than a dozen others are injured after an argument at a local car event escalated into a senseless shooting. The incident took place on the night of March 21st at a car show that was being held in Young Park. According to reports, the show was a monthly occurrence and more than 200 people had attended that evening. However, it was apparently not a city-sanctioned event. Things took a horrifying turn around 10 p.m. when an argument broke out between 2 groups of people there. It's not clear what that argument was about, but things quickly escalated. Moments later, multiple shooters pulled out weapons and began firing. Based on examinations of the crime scene afterwards, police say that at least 40 to 60 rounds were shot from several different handguns. Authorities were quick to arrive to the scene, but sadly, things had already turned deadly. 2 people, 16-year-old Andre Madrid and 18-year-old Jason Gomez, died at the scene, while 19-year-old Dominic Estrada succumbed to his injuries at the hospital. A further 15 people were wounded. Almost no information has been released about these victims, though police have stated that there were 9 injured males and 6 injured females, and they ranged in age from 16 to 36. Over the weekend, police made 4 arrests in connection with the violent crime. Only one of those suspects has been identified by name at the time of this recording, 20-year-old Tomas Rivas. The other suspects are said to be 2 17-year-olds and a 15-year-old. Each of them has been charged with 3 counts of open murder. However, more charges are expected to follow. In an ominous and quite frankly depressing statement following the deadly incident, Las Cruces City Councilor and Mayor Pro Tem Johanna Bencomo summed up the situation this way. On her social media account, she wrote, quote, "Part of me wanted to write that this is something you never really think is going to happen in your city, but that actually feels deeply untrue. Honestly, nowadays, a tragedy like this feels like a nightmare just waiting to come true at any possible moment. Yet you're also always praying and hoping it never will." Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, everyone, and take care.